If you've been on YouTube for any amount of time in the past few years, you would have stumbled across a spicy take that these new Disney remakes are bad.
What?
They're bad. They're just awful. They're not good.
Are you satisfied?
This is not exactly a hot take when it comes to this topic, but while many people do not like these movies, myself included, it cannot be denied that most of them, when they are released in theaters anyway, do extraordinarily well at the box office. Love them or hate them, these movies are here to stay. Many people legitimately like these movies, and they feel that these remakes are sufficient representations of these earlier animated films.
This is living my childhood.
Pinocchio is, after all, just a live-action version of Pinocchio from 1940, right?
No!
I'm going to skip past the surface level differences between these movies as they are important, but ultimately for another video. Maybe one day when I'm feeling truly masochistic, I'll get into the weeds of every single one of these movies, but for now, I just want to talk about The Lion King.
I can explain.
No, really, The Lion King. I promise. It's important for understanding the issues with Pinocchio as well. While Pinocchio and The Lion King are obviously quite different in a lot of ways, I do think that they share one important quality in this discussion: communication of theme. The Lion King is about facing our past and learning from the mistakes we have made, the whole circle of life thing. We can't run from or deny the reality of the consequences of the choices we have made, but rather we must learn from them to move forward with our lives. Pinocchio is a story about growing up, learning right from wrong, making some mistakes along the way, but ultimately learning a positive lesson from the experience. That's pretty much it. Both the films have wonderful animation and some catchy songs sprinkled throughout, but neither one of these films would work very well if it weren't for the simplicity and effectiveness of these characters. As an audience, we understand that Pinocchio choosing to drink and smoke at Pleasure Island is the morally wrong choice, and he faces consequences for it. He learns from the experience, so by the end of the movie, he is rewarded with becoming a real boy. As an audience, we buy into Simba's journey as he blames himself for his father's death. But he learns to accept his responsibility and return to Pride Rock to face the consequences. We understand why Simba has these doubts and why he chooses to move past them. And as simple as these stories are, they work. These films are dear to us. That's why this nostalgia bait of remakes and remasters works so well. We love these movies. The reason these movies work is pretty clearly on the surface. You don't have to do a deep film analysis to understand exactly what's going on in these movies. So you'd think there'd be no confusion in the writer's room when it came to this topic, but that's not the case. Both of these live-action remakes managed to completely miss the point of the two most pivotal scenes in the original movies. I think The Lion King can best be compared to the original through one important character, Rafiki. Rafiki is sort of a spiritual leader of Pride Rock. He seems to always know a bit more than the other characters and is deeply connected to nature in a way that everyone else just isn't. His wisdom is heavily symbolized by the stick he carries, and this wisdom is extended in the manner in which he uses it. He literally hits Simba on the head with his stick in order to teach him a lesson and to get him to learn from his mistakes.
Ow!
I know people always cry at Mufasa's death, and I did too as a kid, but as an adult, when I watch this movie, I always choke up and get all misty-eyed at this moment right here.
Jesus, what was that for?
It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
Yeah, but it still hurts.
Oh, yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it. Ah! You see? So what are you going to do?
Something about how obviously this lesson is spelled out for Simba is really perfect and punches me right in the feels every time. Like right here, I just, it's so good. It's so good. I'd argue that this scene right here is the most important scene in the film, or at least this is the most important scene when it comes to conveying the theme of the story and crystallizing Simba's character arc. I'd argue that, by extension, his stick is of great symbolic importance to the universe of the story. In The Lion King 2019, Rafiki doesn't even have the stick at all. It's just not there. The scene is technically there, but the dialogue relating to the past and mistakes and pain is completely absent from the film. Not only is it absent, but it isn't replaced by anything else. There's no like deconstruction or reinterpretation of the scene. It's just not there anymore. Simba speaks to Mufasa, and Mufasa says that Simba needs to remember who he is. But that's really half the point. It's not just he needs to remember he's Mufasa's son, he needs to remember what that means and what he can do about it now. Rafiki hits him with the stick to illustrate this point. The past sucks. It hurts. Making mistakes sucks. But we have to move on and learn from the experience. This is how we grow. In the remake,
Simba, remember who you are.
What?
Remember who you are, Simba.
Okay.
and then to make matters worse, after an entire movie of a stickless Rafiki in which they have intentionally left out the metaphor of the stick whack trauma relating to emotional trauma, they have the gall, the audacity to bring back the stick anyway, because apparently it's just really important that Rafiki has this stick for the final fight.
But he had to have a stick for the fight, so we figured he kept it hidden. I'm curious if people get that when we see it with the audience. If people remember the stick. It's like his lightsaber.
So, Pinocchio. Pinocchio has a very similar problem to The Lion King, although with Pinocchio it's possibly even worse somehow. You know how Pinocchio lying and his nose getting longer is like the most famous part of the movie, and how he learns that lying to get what he wants or just to save face is going to result in more lies until it becomes as plain as the nose on his face. Like, that's the point. You know that scene, right? It's like the moral stance of the movie. If you were to distill the point down to a single scene, this would be it. With that in mind, we can maybe agree that Pinocchio getting rewarded for lying in a scene which originally displayed why lying is morally wrong might be a bit weird, right? It would be a bit strange if Pinocchio was, say, trapped in a cage and trying to teach him a lesson. Jiminy Cricket scolds him for his actions, so Pinocchio lies to save face because he's embarrassed and his nose grows big, and then Jiminy Cricket scolds him even more, but then Pinocchio sees that the keys are on the other side of the room, so he just keeps lying so he can reach the key, thereby freeing himself. That would be a bit weird, right? Like, if the remake of a movie that originally condemned lying and dishonesty suddenly, in its remake, rewarded the same character for doing just that. Like, Pinocchio, it's fine. You can lie a little bit sometimes, as long as it gets you what you want, as long as it gets you from point A to point B in a more efficient and better way. Why not lie? Lie all you want. As long as it gets you the keys to the cage, you're fine, right? That's a little strange, isn't it? Like, isn't that weird? Am I the only one that thinks this is a little fucked up in a movie about, like, being honest and becoming the best version of yourself? That, hey, lying's totally cool as long as it serves your purposes. That's fine. How do you fuck up that badly? Seriously, like, how? How do you fuck up that badly? This scene is like the symbol for the consequences of dishonesty. Children understand this moral. It's like if a movie took the Iron Giant, an anti-gun symbol, and put him in the middle of a battle scene that glorifies violence. Oh, god damn it! Fuck. Look, Pinocchio certainly has other flaws. The editing and pacing of scenes is all over the place, with scenes ending far later than it seems like they should. There are bad, sometimes even unfinished VFX shots throughout the film. Pinocchio sort of has a love interest for some fucking reason. The dialogue takes way too long to convey what is going on in any given scene. In fact, most of the dialogue is exposition, and I'm not even kidding when I say that there is a solid 35 seconds of ranting when Pinocchio explains the events of the movie up until that point in snippets which are clearly edited together to sound like one cohesive long rant. All right, really quick, see if you can guess. My roommate walked in when I was watching this scene, and he thought this was Benicio del Toro. Without Googling, just see if you can guess who this is. Is this Benicio del Toro or Sacha Baron Cohen? Correct, it's Luke Evans. This movie has all of these issues and more, but none of them really hold a candle to the singular issue of theme. This scene broke me. More than anything else, the theme is the stance the film is taking. The theme is what the film is trying to say. And it is that misunderstanding itself that is the problem. It is not that these movies change things too little or too much, but that they seem incapable of understanding why these decisions were made in the first place. The filmmakers do not understand why these scenes are the way that they are. They do not understand why Rafiki's stick matters. They do not understand why the lying scene matters. They don't know what these scenes are doing in the first place. So when they change them into something else, they do not understand what they are changing and do not understand what they are changing them into. When it comes to these remakes, I don't usually foresee myself enjoying them. For one, on the surface, the original likely can't be matched because the reasons for it succeeding are largely due to the medium of animation. The Lion King works by virtue of its colorful animation and expressive characters. If these things aren't present, then the same story without any other meaningful changes doesn't really do anything to improve upon or interpret the source material. In fact, it dilutes it. It lessens it. Compare these two shots. I know I just complained that they changed a core aspect of the story in Pinocchio, but that only really bothers me because the rest of the film is so clearly trying to be the original movie, at least in a very shallow, vapid sort of way. The scenes and dialogue and images are there, but without any of the thematic context, they lose any punch they might have. Pinocchio ditches school in the original film to go join Stromboli's show, but in the new movie, Pinocchio is kicked out of school and then goes to work for Stromboli. Pinocchio doesn't make the choice is made for him. Pinocchio doesn't choose to drink and smoke with Lampwick, he almost literally gets railroaded into participating in mayhem and debauchery. And this is further sanitized to root beer and free bricks. Pinocchio watches Lampwick destroy some clocks and protests the destruction of said clocks, not because he thinks that destroying things for no reason is inherently wrong, but because it might make Geppetto sad.
They look like my father's clocks.
Oh yeah? Watch this.
Pinocchio lies, but his dishonesty is proven to help him. This movie uses the same imagery of the original Pinocchio while completely removing the elements that made that story work. As a result, it's a thematic mess. Look, I don't want to pretend that the original Pinocchio was perfect. At the end of the day, it is a movie that is very much a product of its time and very much reinforces a narrow worldview that worked at that time for some people. Take the straight and narrow path and don't rock the boat. This theme can be interesting, and in a remake, it can be interrogated and reinterpreted in an interesting way if the right creatives got their hands on it. My point is, this can't happen in these remakes. These movies have to make a certain amount of money, and the primary way they make this money is by playing on the nostalgia of people like you and me. They can't change these movies that much, or they risk alienating a large portion of their audience. They can change little details and add a few new characters, but the core of these movies, at least the shallow representation of them, must remain the same. They have to take the straight and narrow path. I thought Joseph Gordon-Levitt did a decent job as Jiminy Cricket, but Tom Hanks was cringy as hell throughout the movie. 2 out of 10. Bye!